A warm welcome to Diplomatic Channel. I'm Amarachi Ubani. This week we take a look back at how Nigeria's foreign policy has fared for 60 years. Our guest is former Nigerian ambassador to Ethiopia, Nkoyo Toyo. That's Diplomatic Channel in a wrap. Let's take a quick check on other discussions around the world. We'll be right back. Tens of thousands of people marched through the center of the Belarusian capital, Minsk, on Sunday to demand that authorities free political prisoners, prompting the police to turn the water cannon on them. The police used water cannon mounted on armed police vehicles to disperse protesters and detain scores of them. Armed policemen in black helmets holding batons also cordoned off streets in central Minsk. Azerbaijan says Armenian forces fired rockets at its second city of Ganja, killing 1 civilian and wounding 4, and threatened to retaliate by destroying military targets inside Armenia. The development marked a sharp escalation of the war in the South Caucasus that broke out 1 week ago. The South Pacific archipelago of New Caledonia on Sunday voted against independence from France for the second time in as many years. A surprise yes vote would have deprived Paris of a foothold in a region where China is expanding its influence and dented the pride of a colonial power whose reach once spanned large parts of Africa, Southeast Asia, the Caribbean, and the Pacific. Welcome back. 60 years since Nigeria became independent of Great Britain, her foreign policy has pivoted on Africa being the centerpiece of her foreign policy. Even though this policy has been guided by different themes over the years, it's clear Nigeria's relations with her neighbors has always been priority. But let's see how the country has fared over the last 60 years.
Nigeria becoming independent of Great Britain in 1960 can be likened to a baby being born, and as the years go by, development begins of mind and body. And so did her foreign policy. In the early 60s, the country was the cynosure of many countries, a country born with an abundance of resources, and with the discovery of oil in 1956, she was a new bride, and everyone wanted to court her. Revenues accrued from the sale of oil also meant she had a say in many happenings on the continent. Hence, she played the big brother role, fighting for the independence of many African countries and extending her influence even beyond the continent. Hence came the coinage of Africa being the center of Nigeria's foreign policy. Countries looked to Nigeria for leadership and guidance. Through her influence, regional and continental body ECOWAS and then Organization of African Unity were established. Nigeria bore huge costs of Africa's peacekeeping missions, settled bilateral disputes, took on responsibilities beyond the continent. Perhaps her strongest era was said to have been under military rule, when these partnerships were made, and thanks to the oil money, she always had enough for herself and for others. Today, the nation seeks collaborations from African partners who over time have treated these partnerships with disdain. In the last year, several meetings have been held between the Nigerian and South African leaders over attacks on Nigerian citizens. Recently, there was a protest at the Nigerian High Commission in Pretoria over accusations of crimes committed by Nigerians in the country, which the High Commissioner denounced. Last year, Nigerians and citizens of some other African countries became targets of attacks in South Africa, enraged by the lack of jobs and opportunities they said were being taken over by immigrants. And in Ghana, there's been ongoing row between Nigerian and Ghanaian traders, which roots can be traced to Nigeria shutting her land borders to curb smuggling and proliferation of light arms and ammunition. Now, the traders say their lives are no longer safe in Ghana and have been calling for the evacuation of Nigerians in Ghana, requests that have not been formally presented to the Nigerian High Commission in the country. Back in July, a building within the premises of the Nigerian High Commission in Ghana was destroyed by a private citizen, a move that enraged Nigerians and resulted in high-level diplomatic efforts to quell an impending row. Insecurity in neighboring Niger, Mali, even Burkina Faso have all threatened security within the country. And while a joint military task force was set up to enable countries within the region to share information and join forces in fighting insurgency, cooperation has been tough as Nigeria faces even more challenge with insecurity within her borders. For years, Nigeria has sought continental support in acquiring a permanent seat in the United Nations Security Council. While she is not the only country also seeking permanent status of the world body, she is yet to receive such support. Yet she remains at the forefront for calls for UN reforms. As the nation looks forward to more development and greater participation in global events, the question now is, in what direction will Nigeria take her foreign policy? And is it time to nationalize her foreign policy where she puts her citizens first, side by side national interest? Also, what will become of the giant of Africa 60 years from today?
Joining us now to discuss the future of Nigeria's foreign policy and the way it's been over the last 60 years is former ambassador to Ethiopia and founder of the Gender and Development Action, GADA, Nigeria, Ambassador Nkoyo Toyo. She joins us now from Abuja. Ambassador Nkoyo, thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you very much, Amarachi, for having me.
It's a pleasure having you here. So let's begin. 60 years since Nigeria's independence, what would you say have been the drivers of the country's foreign policy?
Thank you, and a great congratulations to Nigeria at 60. It's an unenviable age. I think every country's foreign policy is very dependent on the geopolitical environment across the world. Foreign policy is defined by what is happening between a nation state and many other nation states, some of which is bilateral, others are multilateral, others are regional in nature. So it's a function of many other things. You will recall that 60 years ago, at least in Africa, what was driving the foreign policy of many countries was the independence of many countries on African continent. As you know, many countries were still under colonial rule, and the struggles to get independence was a major part in the definition of some of what constituted our foreign policy. And that also was the basis for much of what happened post-independence in many countries, as many countries began to define themselves as nation states and tried to belong to the community of nations. So foreign policy is a function of what's happening, not just within the context of a country, but in the context of the global space in which that country is a part of. So I would say that over the last 60 years, a couple of benchmarks or a couple of issues have defined our foreign policy. One is the post-independence struggles, in which we try to define ourselves in the context of being Black people and being African, which led to the creation of the African Union, then known as the OAU, with a strong statement to the rest of the world that Africa and the Black race was emerging from its history of colonial exploitation. Post that came the fact that the rest of the continent, or the countries that had come out of colonial government, felt that all parts of Africa had to become independent as well. So you would see that in the 70s and late 70s towards the 80s, the issue of apartheid in Southern Africa and the Southern African region as a whole became a major part of the plank of what we did as a country in our foreign policy. Basically, it was an extension of what we had done pre and post-independence in trying to say that the rest of Africa had to be independent. And that was the mission of the setting up of the African Union, which is part of why we always had said at the time that Africa is the center place of our foreign policy. Howbeit, in doing so, we took very strong steps. You remember the nationalization of British economic interest in Nigeria, which led to a major push for the liberation of Southern Africa from apartheid and the many other things which we did, including saying that we were part of the frontline states that were fighting for the end to come to the apartheid rule in Southern Africa. So over the years, we saw post-apartheid, we also saw quite a bit by way of many countries being under military rule. When we ourselves were under military rule, it seemed to be fashionable that as more African countries became democratic, we also took the center stage in defining the new governance architecture for Africa. Nigeria is one of the major players in speaking to the point of the return of democratic rule across Africa, and the instruments that guide that at the African level, we were major part of the formulation of those instruments, which is why today, if a country decides to undertake a coup, like has just happened in Mali, both under ECOWAS and the African Union, there are very stringent measures which can be taken to isolate such countries and isolate the leadership that has emerged from that. Post all of this came several conflicts within Africa, and you saw the dominant role that Nigeria played in countries like Sierra Leone, Liberia, in the liberation of South Sudan, Congo, and many other parts of the continent where we took part in military operations as well as peacekeeping forces. So my point in question is that foreign policy is also defined by what's happening globally. And Nigeria has always been responsive to those global agendas and has taken part in making it work. But then you would see that the highlights and the high points of our 60 years of foreign policy had been the moments when we were strongest in defining the direction of Africa and talking and speaking as the biggest country in the African continent and the largest population of the Black race anywhere else in the world. Speaking up to that constituency of Black people, speaking up to that constituency of our regional dominance and making the points across the world with regards to who we are.
Well, thank you for taking us back and then bringing us up until where we are. But it's said that the world right now has deviated from traditional diplomacy. And now you have social media, you have the media, you also have public policies, all of these becoming influencers of foreign policy. How can Nigeria use these instruments to her advantage? And is she using them at all?
As much as the social media has become the defining moments of the information age which we live in, where information goes much further than what nation states can do, foreign policy continues to be defined by the relationship between one nation state and another. So at the end of the day, countries have to sit down and redefine their interests within the ambit of international law and international conventions and practice. So for example, if Nigeria is the signatory to CEDAW, for example, the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Violence Against Women, for example, that would be the convention that will still define the relationships between countries. Howbeit, the role of social media will be to highlight some of the failures on the part of the nation state to conform or to domesticate those kinds of laws and make them more agreeable to their commitments at those international levels. So what I'm trying to say is that countries are accountable to each other on the basis of the bilateral relationships which they enter into, or on the basis of the multilateral relationships. You saw what happened when Donald Trump decided to step away from the Paris Agreement that was reached on climate change. The Paris Agreement continues to be the agreement that holds the entire world together on the issues of climate change and the commitment of nation states to climate change. That doesn't distract from the fact that the social media has been used by many social activists and non-government bodies to champion and campaign for the issues of the protection of the environment. Howbeit, what defines the relationship as far as nation states are concerned continues to be the conventions and the agreements and those things that they commit themselves to.
We'll take a break now. Diplomatic Channel. We'll be right back. Ambassador, you mentioned the ECOWAS. Nigeria is one of the founding fathers of the ECOWAS, the regional body, as well as the Organization of African Unity, which you mentioned, which is now the African Union. Do you think that Nigeria today still asserts, over her sphere of influence in these two groups and across the continent, these organizations that she helped to build?
Sadly, Amarachi, you cannot give what you do not have. Foreign policy is about what you can give. Countries give to other countries in return for what they get from us. So there's some level of bargaining in diplomacy, some level of negotiation, some level of exchange going on inside diplomacy. Therefore, it's not just the setting up of international and regional bodies that makes a country's foreign policy strong. It's how you as a country is seen and perceived by those you have brought together into that alliance. So if, for example, today we are in ECOWAS, and yet we are not even able to exercise enough influence over the sub-region, see what's happening to us in our northeastern flank and even our northwestern flank of our country, how this crisis in countries like Mali, Libya, the entire Niger area, that whole area that is very open and very poorly managed in terms of security and all that, and is ending up in Nigeria, shows you the state of our own internal preparedness and disorganization. And as long as the other countries perceive you as being weak inside your country, it's difficult for you to be able to exert the kind of influence you want us to exert on those international organizations.
In what direction then is this pushing us to, the coronavirus pandemic with global diplomacy and how things should change going forward for the better?
Oh, definitely, it's a great opportunity, Amarachi. If Nigeria had its acts together in country, this would have been a great opportunity for it. Sadly, I think this last 4 years of our leadership hasn't been very, very pushful about our foreign policy priorities. COVID would have been a great opportunity. With the withdrawal of Donald Trump and America from the WHO, and this is the one regional or international body with a mandate to look at issues of public health globally, I think this would have been a major opportunity for Nigeria to wake up and say, look, I have the largest Black population. This organization is important for me, and this is why it is important, and to make a case, particularly as that organization was headed by an African, as to the importance of the organization to us, as well as the importance of supporting the African who was there. I think he's Ethiopian at the head of that organization. So it would have been a great opportunity. Amarachi, the other great opportunity is that we are Black. Black lives matter.
Yeah.
Amarachi, Black lives matter. Where is our foreign policy on the Black race? Where is it? It's an opportunity as well. It's a time for us to jump in and say, yes, Black lives matter. And our foreign policy would have been defined around, this is what it means to be Black, and this is how we will relate with other countries in furtherance of our Black identity and our Black heritage. The internal crisis of our country is the bane of our diplomacy. We can't run too far away. Like they say, the seed doesn't fall too far away from the tree. Our foreign policy definitely is at the point where the state of the country also is.
Finally, just wondering if, what you're saying has any relation to do with Nigeria calling for a permanent seat at the UN Security Council. This has been a call that has been made over the years. In fact, almost every leader whose country is not in the UN Security Council is calling for representation in the UN Security Council. How can Nigeria, in the state that she is right now with her foreign policy, leverage on, any gains to be able to be visible enough in the UN?
Don't get me wrong at all. Nigeria is a big country. It's a huge country. It's just a badly managed country. It's huge. It's a big country. It's got the biggest black diaspora anywhere in the world. It's got one of the, I think next to India, we probably have the largest educated human resource outside of the home continent, of the home country where they come from. So we have a very huge political footprint outside the country and within the country itself. But for us to take advantage, it's one thing to name us a member of the Security Council, which is just a name. Same thing like being named as one of the founding fathers and one of the funders of the African Union. I mean, we were the big five that pay for the African Union. And the same thing for ECOWAS. It's one of those things. But the question is, Security Council for what? I would say if Nigeria organized itself a little bit more, in this rivalry that's coming out between China and the US is going to look for friends in the Security Council to undermine the authority of China. And in doing so, it will bring in some weaker countries or smaller or less influential countries to make up the Security Council and build some alliances within the Security Council. So it's not a far-fetched thing for us to get the position in the Security Council. It's within our reach. But I am unfortunately one of those who believes, and maybe because I'm a woman, and we women tend to see the tangibility of the things that we do. The question I ask myself is, Security Council for what? Is it just for the name, or is it in order to be able to fight Boko Haram and get people who will be able to get them off our lands? What exactly are we getting into the Security Council for?
But this has been a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Appreciate your dedicating your time to be with us on Diplomatic Channel. Thank you again.
Thanks, Amarachi. Look forward to doing it again. Bye.
Certainly. Bye. Last week's celebration of Nigeria's Independence Day was low-key because of the coronavirus. That did not stop the goodwill messages rolling in. Here are just a few. First off was Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. Just a reminder here that she was Queen of Nigeria from 1960 to 1963. Nigeria was an independent constitutional monarchy. Her Majesty's message was conveyed by the British High Commission in Nigeria, in which she said, "It gives me great pleasure to offer my warmest congratulations on the 60th anniversary of Nigeria's independence, together with my best wishes for your country's continued happiness and prosperity. The United Kingdom and Nigeria benefit from strong and enduring ties as Commonwealth partners through shared history and, most importantly, our people. These bonds that I hope and believe will flourish long into the future." From the Israeli government came this goodwill message through the Israeli ambassador to Nigeria, His Excellency Shimon ben Shoshan, in which he says, "I am proud to note with satisfaction the strong diplomatic relations and friendship that exists today between our countries. I also witnessed the growth of the bilateral cooperation over the last 60 years. This was achieved through advancements in areas of common interests, such as agriculture, water, education, health, innovation, security, infrastructure, and culture." He also said he looked forward to success in the establishment of direct flights between Nigeria and Israel, the expansion of tourism opportunities for Nigerians, and the enlargement of training opportunities in various domains at the startup nation. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo conveyed the best wishes of the American government and people to Nigeria in a statement saying, "Our countries share important democratic values and a similar entrepreneurial spirit, and we congratulate the Nigerian people for your commitment to tackling corruption, strengthen democratic institutions, and leveraging Nigerian entrepreneurship to promote economic recovery. Nigeria is an important leader in West Africa and across the entire continent. The United States will continue to support the Nigerian people as you seek to collaborate with your neighbors to expand regional peace and security and counter violent extremists." Finally is a video message from the EU ambassador to Nigeria, Mr. Ketil Carlson.
Not only do we share the same age, roughly, but we also share the same values. The right for self-determination as the point of departure for genuine democratic governance. And in Europe, just like in Nigeria, we are united in diversity. And what really stands out in Nigeria is that very rich diversity, whether based on different cultures, languages, ethnicities, or religions. And I think and hope that this is something that should make every Nigerian very, very proud.
And that's the program this week. Thank you for joining us, and we hope you join us again. I'll see you next time. I'm Amarachi Ubani.